I want to hear your inside info. You hinted at that yesterday on international television. I'd like you to, because I know you don't make stuff up, give us entree into your inside info. We'd really appreciate it. All those investors and people out there that want to know what's happening, because you are there in that major crossroads of Paris. But before we get to that, there's something larger going on here. I read Club of Rome and UN documents and Rockefeller documents 15 years ago that they'd written years before that, 20 years ago, that they plan to use the U.S., use us as a military to set up world government, then blame everything on us, implode the dollar, and bring in a new bank-to-bank currency, and then have regional currencies. They don't want to have one global currency that they manipulate and play the markets on a global scale, so there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and that now Russia and China are basically owned and controlled by these interests, and that the U.S. is just having all the debt piled on it, and that they're preparing to kind of seal the deal or swap spit or become blood brothers by torching the U.S. into third worlddom. And so that China and Russia and the Middle East shouldn't be celebrating so much. Sure, the U.S. is the drunk husband that comes home, every night and cold cocks them. But they're getting out of bed with the U.S. and getting in bed with Beelzebub.
Well, break it down very simply. It's very simple to put it in the following terms. 75% of all the transactions in the world take place in U.S. dollars. It is the world's reserve currency. And that's the way it's been since the end of World War II, and it is the basis of America's hegemony around the world. And America has a soft empire, as well as a hard empire. They have, of course, their embassies and they have their facilities all over the world, but the dollar has really been the means by which they have the major influence around the world. And what these countries like Russia and China and Iran, of course, signed the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, the SCO. If you look that up on Google, you'll find out all about it. They have a mutual defense pact. If America hits Iran, China and Russia have pledged to side with Iran and strike back, basically. So it's just economics. China has a deal with Iran for $8 billion in oil, and America seems addicted to war to feed their machine. Last year in 2008, Alex, the U.S. collected about $2.5 trillion in taxes, and 100% of that money went to two places: bailouts on Wall Street and the defense contractors. Now, that's an incredible statistic. 100% of all income tax collected last year, $2.5 trillion, went to either bailouts or military. There's no money going anywhere else. And, this is just setting up the dollar as really the leper with the most fingers. Or I should say it's the leper with the least fingers. It's a currency that nobody wants anymore, and they're putting in place these other currencies, and they're looking at gold because gold is the only way that they can have any accountability and that they can have any way of hoping to escape all of the debt meisters there on Wall Street.
Yeah, not being shysted by the money changers that are always creating tens of trillions in fiat money and then using it as weapons, economic and military weapons against them. Now, the vampires of central banking, the best, the dirtiest, are out of Europe and the U.S., obviously, but China and other people play their games. The Arabs have their own system of banking, but they don't allow the usury. We're up to 30% loan sharking rates here in the U.S. now with the credit card population, so much so that people are kicking the habit and going to debit cards. Debit cards for Visa this week finally passed more use than credit cards, so that's something healthy out of all this. But will the Goldman Sachs vampires just move on after they've eaten the bones off of the United States, or are they dependent? Is this their Transylvanian earth? Is England, Israel, the United States, Germany, France, is that Count Dracula's earth that he can go anywhere, but he's got to haul those caskets around? Is there any way to kill the vampire?
With a silver spike. A spike made of silver. In other words, the thing that Goldman Sachs and these guys on Wall Street hate is gold and silver, because it's the opposite of a fiat money system. I've told people for years now, if they want to kill Goldman Sachs deader than a hammer, as you might say, if everyone bought 1 ounce of gold bullion and the price traded immediately up to its inflation-adjusted normal price of $2,000 an ounce, it would remove 90% of Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan's ability to spin cotton candy derivatives out of, pulling it out of their backsides and claiming that this has some validity in the market. And that's why they just hate gold, and that's why they've done everything since Milton Friedman and Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke and Tim Geithner. All their rhetoric, all their white papers, all their doctoral dissertations have all been about the greatness of fiat currency and fractional reserve banking and why gold is dead. Now, what's happening? Now, let me get into this. What's happening is that these countries that are gold, that are petroleum exporters, are saying enough is enough. We don't care what the risks are at this point because we're sick of America's wars. We're sick of all the market manipulation. We're sick of Goldman Sachs manipulating the COMEX and the NYMEX. We're just going to introduce our own basket, our own currency. We're going to put gold in there. It'll be the first gold-backed security currency since 1971, when the U.S. dollar still had some tenuous connection to gold, but there really hasn't been a gold-backed.
But Max, the last time they did that, the globalists blew the hell out of Iraq, saying they had WMDs. Now the Arabs are getting ready to do it again, and notice they found secret reactors that the Easter Bunny laid.
Well, yeah, of course. Iraq said that they wanted to start trading oil in euros, and the next thing you know was shock and awe. And then Iran started saying, we want to trade our oil in euros, and suddenly, the game was moved over to Iran. But here's what I'm hearing, and this is kind of the interesting story, if you will. Stacey Herbert and I made a really interesting film a couple of years ago about gold, and we interviewed folks over at the Bundesbank in Germany. And at that time, it was revealed to us anyway that their 3,000 tons of gold, much of it was held outside of Germany and held, in fact, in the United States. And what I'm hearing now, Alex, is that Germany, like France did back in the 60s, they're going to demand their gold bullion delivered to them. The physical gold. Back in the 60s, de Gaulle sent warships to New York and forced America to put their gold, France's gold, onto a ship.
Stay there.
And they shipped it back to Europe.
Stay there. And he wouldn't let NATO in his country either, but now they just let NATO back in. Stay there, Max Keiser. Amazing. Inside info directly from Paris. Straight ahead with Max Keiser at MaxKeiser.com.